Hi, welcome to Marquis Presents Your Key to Healthy Living. I'm your host, Karen Halloren, Community Liaison for Marquis Health Services. And today I have Doug Warren. He is from Susan Bailis Assisted Living here on the show today. Welcome, Doug. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much. Appreciate being here, Karen.
Thank you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Susan Bailis and how you got involved with assisted living?
Okay. Actually, I got involved about 20 years ago now.
Wow.
I actually helped my father look for assisted livings for my grandmother. And I was in the marketing field, client service, customer service, and I thought to myself, wow, this is a very fascinating field, because it was a pretty new field at the time. Mm-hmm. And I said, I could really like doing this. I love helping people. I love, client and customer service. And so I kind of jumped into the arena by joining some networking groups and started a place right after the 2000 year.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
And assisted living, there's so many different types of housing for seniors. So maybe we could just step back a little bit. I know a lot of people do know what assisted living is, but maybe for the people out there that are unsure what exactly is assisted living, because there's independent living and assisted living, and there's a little bit of a difference.
Yeah, and it is a lot of information to go over, and it can very much overwhelm people, family members, people that they're looking for, loved ones. So it does kind of categorize themselves into kind of like independent living, which most people, you can still live in like a little cluster home, or live in a larger apartment, usually that has a full kitchen, but they typically offer maybe one meal per day. Mm-hmm. Assisted living is really more for people that can still be as independent as they possibly can be, but they do need some maybe assistance with managing their medications, or assistance with a shower, things like that. Meals and housekeeping is very important. Sometimes they just can't, have the energy, and they become overwhelmed even with just making, daily meals for themselves.
And just managing everything on their own. They could use the assistance, I think, right?
Exactly. So typically assisted livings come with 3 meals per day. And weekly housekeeping. Those are some of the more services that are pretty prevalent across any assisted living community.
And are there any nursing services involved with that?
It depends on the type of, mostly no in assisted living, but there are a few places that are called continuing care retirement communities. And those are really full campuses where you go from like independent living to assisted living and on through to a skilled nursing facility if it's needed. It's a whole different kind of concept where you plunk down a pretty significant amount of money just to get into that system. Mm-hmm. However, in Massachusetts and assisted living in general around the country, most assisted livings are standalones. They sometimes and oftentimes have memory care programs with them that are for people who have really, mid-stage to advanced Alzheimer's. Some assisted livings do not, and they're just for, people who need that assistance with the daily living going forth.
And now, Susan Bailis is located in Boston. So
it is,
it's a little different.
It is very
different.
There's
not a lot of assisted livings in Boston.
No, we're the only one in the heart of Boston. We're diagonally across from Symphony Hall. And I've worked for a few different communities up in the North Shore, and they all are, they all have their place, and they're all wonderful, and they all have their kind of key differences. But it's very fascinating working at the one in downtown Boston, Susan Bailis. It's very culturally diverse, which you would expect.
Right.
It's and also unique to us. It's economically or socioeconomically diverse. Most assisted livings are private pay. So you have to have a fairly significant amount of assets and income to be able to live at one for quite a while. We are a little bit different. Number one, we have what's called a spend down program. So if you're able, and we financially qualify everyone. So if they're able to reside with us for at least 3 years, once they spend down, their assets. We readjust their rent based on their income, and they're able to live with us as long as they can. Most people, most residents who live with us for the rest of their lives.
That's wonderful.
I mean, yeah, it is. It's great. I mean, assisted living in Massachusetts, you cannot provide by the staff of an assisted living any skilled care.
Right.
So you would need to bring in some sort of VNA service from the outside. But we do a great job because one of the things that makes us different is the longevity of staff that we have.
Oh, that's great.
It is, because I think that's so important to the residents.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the reasons why I like to actually also stay at a particular community for quite a while.
Right.
A little bit different maybe than most other people in my role. And my role is marketing and community relations manager or director.
Right.
And what I do is I do outreach in the area, and I also will obviously invite families to come in and visit and look around our community, have some lunch, and just learn more about what the situation is with their families.
Yeah.
So I like to stay in one area or one community because I think it's very important to residents.
Absolutely.
It's that continuity.
Well, and I've been over many times. It's a beautiful center. It is really nice, and
Well,
we
thank you.
work closely together
Yes,
with North
we
End
do.
Rehab.
Yep.
So,
yes, we do.
but it is very nice.
Yeah, and North End Rehab is one of our referral sources. People who
Right.
are going into some rehab who maybe are not able to go home or live alone on their own anymore. They might need to kind of look at that next step of being independent, which is what we strive for and what we encourage at Susan Bailis, but
Right.
they might need that support for some of their activities of daily living. And I think one of the key things that is also important is the socialization.
Yes.
A lot of seniors get isolated when their families, on a daily basis, their families work, their friends around them, there's not as many as there once was. And so I think the socialization piece is very important for assisted livings in general. Mm-hmm. Assisted livings are interesting too because every community is a little bit different.
Sure.
And that's what I always say to families even who visit us. I say, you need to visit a couple of different ones because you want to find the one that's right for your
Sure.
loved one. I think one of the other unique things about our community specifically, besides the continuity and longevity of staff, is the students from the Berkeley School and the New England Conservatory School come over and perform for our residents.
Oh, that's awesome.
They're within walking distance, or they bring their instruments. They're like within a mile, and they just come over and play for us on a regular basis, and it's really great. I mean, they need to do that for their credits and service, and the residents love hearing them, and we have a nice relationship with them.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, if I can just back up for a
Sure.
second, I forgot
That's okay.
to mention that Keene is the parent company, just like Marquis Health Services, which I love. So
Yep.
I know you must love,
I do.
Keene.
Yeah.
And they're the parent company. Do you want to just say
Sure.
something about
Yep.
that?
Yeah. So Keene, they're a large property management company out of Norwood, and one of their other, business divisions, so to speak, is the assisted living component. But we have a lot of experienced, people that work in the assisted living division. We actually have a couple of other assisted livings in the Boston area. One is in Watertown, Brigham House, and one is in Revere, Prospect House. And then we have Susan Bailis, of course. And then we have a couple of communities out in the the central part of Massachusetts and the western part. And then we have a couple in New Hampshire and Rhode Island. So,
That's great.
and what I like about Keene is that they really have, for lack of a better term, a non-profit philosophy. Susan Bailis, she was a real advocate in the city of Boston for having a community that seniors would be able to move to after living in Boston, wouldn't have to move out of Boston, wouldn't have to move out of the market, because as you know, Boston can be a very expensive market, or is an expensive market. She worked with the city. She was a big advocate of having seniors from different, kind of socioeconomic walks of life, so to speak, be able to reside in Boston. And that's kind of part of the setup that we have at Susan Bailis. So we have residents from Back Bay and Beacon Hill, and we have residents from the Fenway area and Roxbury, and we have about 80% that have lived in the city or are kind of city people, so to speak.
That's
and,
fantastic.
Yeah, and everybody's very inclusive, which is what I like.
Right.
They're very welcoming of just different eclectic people, and that's what makes the community very unique.
Sounds great.
Yeah, I'm very happy.
Well, when should somebody start looking for assisted living? That's a
Yeah.
good question.
No,
I mean, I think people start, thinking about it, but then sometimes they miss the boat.
Well, it's interesting you say they start thinking about it, because if you're starting to think about it, then there must be a reason why you're looking into assisted living. And that's actually pretty soon thereafter. That's really the time that you should be moving into an assisted living, because we're not a skilled nursing facility. So we do promote and encourage as much independence as possible, but we are there for the support and assistance for those who do need assistance. But oftentimes, and I've seen it happen, and I understand people want to, remain in their homes
Right.
as long as possible, and I understand that aspect. But once they keep waiting and waiting and waiting, and they finally say, "Okay, I'm ready to come over," they've kind of passed that window. They need more ongoing skilled care
nursing.
types of assistance. Yeah, and so if a family member is thinking about assisted living, or if the person who's actually moving into a Susan Bailis is thinking about moving into assisted living, really that's pretty much the time. The resident who is going to be moving into an assisted living, their time frame is always going to be farther
far
down the
up.
road than the family members who are really concerned about their loved one.
Sure. What does that person look like, though? How old is that usually? Like, what is the age demographic?
Yeah, well, it's interesting with us. Our minimum age is 62. Not a lot of, it depends on the assisted living. Some have age minimums, some do not. We actually are interested in the fact that we have our oldest residents 101. We actually have three
wow.
residents that are over 100 this year.
That's fantastic.
It is. We have a lot of younger residents too, which is another difference between us and most assisted livings, is that our average age is about 80 to 81. In most assisted livings in Massachusetts, the average age is about 90 to 91. And I think part of it is because you're in the city. We're in a wonderful, very accessible location where you can take advantage of all of the cultural amenities and everything to do in Boston. The Huntington Theater is a couple of blocks away, Symphony Hall, the MFA.
And they're able to go out to do some of these different...
The people who are more mobile,
That's
they walk
fantastic.
down there. We also have what's kind of similar to the Lexington Minuteman Trail. It's called the Southwest Corridor.
Yes.
It's a nice paved walking path that goes through the south end, and a lot of our residents love to walk around the city and use that. And we also have a couple of, we're very accessible to public transportation. One's right across the street, one line, and the other line's a block down. And a lot of families say, well, that sounds wonderful, but it's not too easy for me to get in there. Where am I going to find parking?
Right.
We actually have an underground parking
I know
garage
that.
right beneath
That's
our community.
fantastic.
So it opens a lot of family members' eyes to saying, oh, I did not realize that.
Right.
But to get back to your age question, we have more residents between the ages of 65 and 75 and 85 and 95 than we do between 75 and 85.
Oh, that's interesting.
And it's because residents are younger overall. Number two, the residents who move into Susan Bailis have been with us for a long time. Our average length of stay is much longer than the average length of stay in most assisted livings. And so I think that's kind of describes some of the breakdown of the age. But again, we have a couple of people who still drive. We have a lot of residents who don't drive, but they just can't keep up their home anymore. They just can't, have the energy, or it just becomes overwhelming to make meals for themselves, keep up their home, clean their house. Medication management. Remembering when to take your medications. That is huge, and that's one of the other main reasons that people move into Susan Bailis. But then we also will assist residents with a shower, getting dressed. A lot of people have bad backs, or they have osteoporosis, or they just have a bad shoulder, so they need help getting on a blouse, or bending down to get shoes on, and things like that.
Now, can people have pets there?
In a lot of assisted livings, you can have pets. We allow cats.
Okay, I thought so.
Dogs are a little bit more difficult
Sure.
because they need to go out all the time. We're in the city. they have a tendency to be a little bit more, bark.
Right, right.
But yeah, we have, I think, 4 residents right now that have cats.
That's great.
And as long as they're able to take care of them themselves, that's fine. And we have a lot of family members who bring their dogs in to visit,
That's
which
great.
the residents love as
Pet
well.
therapy, everybody loves that, brings a
Exactly.
smile to everybody's face.
Yes, exactly. And we have a lot of volunteers. That whole intergenerational interaction is so important. We have a lot of volunteers that come in from Northeastern and BU who engage and interact with our residents. They'll play games with them, they'll talk with them. The seniors learn from them, and the students learn from the seniors. It's very interesting. Yeah, yeah.
Fantastic. So why should someone choose Susan Bailis?
Well, I think, number one, we are right in the heart of the city, so somebody who wants to take advantage of everything there is to do in the city, I think, is key. We have a lot of people who love the arts, love the theater, have been affiliated in some way with, Harvard or MIT. We have a lot of professors and a lot of people with an educational background, like teachers, professors, people who are somehow affiliated with those universities in some capacity. So that's another.
And I think I remember you telling me they do book clubs and things like that
Yes.
too. So kind of higher level activities too.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting. I mean, I think you find this at a lot of assisted livings, but yeah, there's a lot of residents who love the more intellectual stimulating, if lack of a better term. We have a lot of presentations. We actually are right now doing a series of presentations for our residents on the history of music.
Oh, nice.
Different genres, different generations, how it all started. And that's been very well attended and very interesting.
I'm sure they love that.
Yes, yes. And then we have other residents who love their bingo.
Exactly. Yeah, you're never getting rid of bingo.
That's right. And some people love it, and some people are like, I'm not, not really interested in that. But again, our activities director is wonderful because she really engages and really wants the input from the residents in terms of what do you like to do, what do you want to do. So a lot of our activities are ongoing on a weekly, monthly, daily basis, and some of the activities, they'll be huge for a while, and then they'll kind of ebb and flow, so to speak, depending on the type of residents you have and what their interests are. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the future? Do you think that they're going to be building any more assisted livings in Boston? Seems like there's probably a lot of, constraints when it comes to buildings and things like that.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I kind of go back and forth with that. I mean, I think sort of this baby boom wave that people have been waiting for. I think it's still coming. I mean, I think it shows in drips and drabs, but I think that the assisted living industry is trying to get ahead of the curve, so that you see a lot of development and building of assisted livings around the area. But I think it's it has, in my opinion, come to the point where it is, each and every town, pretty much with the exception of a few, has an assisted living in their town or city. So I think, again, they continue to build, and they'll always will be building of assisted livings. But I think at this point in time, and it may change 5 years from now or 10 years from now, that I think it's pretty, not saturated, but I think it's pretty. I think
the
there's
market
enough.
is
The market's pretty much there as far as right now.
right. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Let me see what else I wanted to ask you about Susan Bailis. There's so much going on there.
There is. I just was trying to think of the other key differences. I think, again, going back, we have a few, now in most assisted livings, it's about 80% women and 20% men.
Oh, and that's a difference here.
Yeah, a little bit of a difference. Yeah, we have about 66% women and 33% men. So it's a little bit more equitable. We're very inclusive. We have about a 15% LGBT population. Again, just the eclectic and cultural diversity of the city. Just kind of that would be naturally there. And just I think the key things, and for families who are looking at assisted livings, I think some of the key things to ask for are the residents happy? That's the main thing. How's the engagement and the interaction between staff members and residents? Between staff members and staff members, between residents and residents. But I think it all comes back to, are the residents happy? Do they seem happy there? A lot of family members who come to a Susan Bailis say, wow, you have a lot of active residents around here. So again, I think that goes back to the fact that we're a little bit of a younger population, a little bit more independent and population as far as mobility. But again, we have residents who need assistance, and we're able to support that assistance as well.
So if somebody today is looking for assisted living, what would you say? Go out and take a tour, first figure
Yes.
out what area you want to be in.
Yeah, and I
then-
think area is a component to be considered, but I don't think it's really the heaviest factor. I think you should. What I tell families is, if you first of all, I think you need to get your loved one involved. If they're really at the point where they might feel overwhelmed, just there's a lot of information, there's a lot of decision making to be had. I always tell families, and it really depends on the level of independence and ability that the person has. I tell families, why don't you go look at maybe 4 or 5 that you think your mother or father or whomever you're looking for would like, not you, because they might like something that's a little bit different than what you would like.
Right.
And then narrow it down to 2 that you feel would be the best for whom you're looking for. And then bring your loved one to those 2.
Yeah, because maybe going to look at 4 or 5 is too overwhelming for the person.
Well,
that
then
is
it's
actually-
an either-or decision.
Correct.
Is it this one do you like, or is it this one do you like? And then there's which one had this and that. So it's
Right.
really an either-or decision. So that's what I recommend to families. And really, it's all about the right fit for your loved one.
And take that tour, see how it...
That's
just-
the other thing. A lot of seniors have the preconceived notion that assisted livings are just another name for a skilled nursing facility. And that's not the case. I mean, assisted living, assisted livings are just newer. That, back in the day, that's what all there were nursing homes.
Right.
So I always tell families, even if they have that preconceived notion, even if you're just driving by an assisted living, point that out to them. Hey, that's an assisted living. Or start that conversation.
Right.
It does take a little bit of time, depending on kind of where your loved one's mindset is at. But I always kind of make the analogy of it's like going to the gym. Once you go to the gym, keep going to the gym, because then you're going to make progress. If you go to the gym and then you kind of stop going, and then you try to go to the gym 2 months later, you're going to be back at square one. So
Good analogy.
as far as the conversation that goes along with talking to your loved one, keep the conversation going. Keep it on top of mind, even if it's heavy-duty conversation or if it's just in little drips and drabs. Driving by an assisted living. Did you know that's an assisted living? Isn't that beautiful? Sometimes you just go into the lobby, just to kind of get a little taste of it.
Right.
Speaking of that, I always invite people for lunch. Everything is made fresh daily at our community, and so I always bring people in for complimentary lunches. They get to try the food, talk to the residents, really make it a good experience, which is really what it's all about. And I also tell families, if they're really having a hard time, and there's no panacea for, really trying to talk with your loved one about assisted living, but sometimes you as a family member are the person that they're going to push back against the most.
Sure.
So I always say, maybe the doctor, your loved one's doctor, can be an advocate for assisted living. Hearing it from a doctor, especially people of that generation, they have a very high regard for medical professionals.
Correct.
Well, my doctor knows what's good for me. Why would you know what's good for me? You're my son or daughter. You're in the engineering field, things like that. So that's a key thing, to try to get advocacy from their doctor. And just keep the conversation going. You got to have it be their decision, but at the same time, you have to kind of funnel it down so that they're making the right decision.
Exactly. And it's all really about safety, too.
It is totally about safety. Yep. And it's really totally about once they make the move to Susan Bailis, it's about them thriving.
Correct.
And I often tell people, this is interesting, that you are actually more independent being at Susan Bailis than
I bet.
where you've been. And they're like, how do you mean that? Because you don't have to worry about cooking for yourself. Now, we do have kitchenettes in our apartments. Everybody has a private apartment.
People have the luxury of, if they do want to make a little something, they can.
Right. There's refrigerators, microwaves, stovetops. It just doesn't have an oven. We always look at the safety of residents. So if we feel that it's not a safety issue and a resident is going to maybe regularly make some tea or some soup, we'll activate the stovetop. But we have the 3 meals a day, so quite frankly, most people just use the microwave. A lot of assisted livings do not have even stovetops or full-fledged kitchenettes, so to speak.
Right.
So again, it just kind of shows the varied type of residents we have,
Right,
from
the
very
different
independent
levels.
to having that full support.
Sure.
And we have additional care levels in case people do need more support over time as they're living with us.
So you could have care come in if they needed it.
Well, additional support levels from our own staff.
Oh, okay.
But then also, you're right, we do have a couple of residents who bring in their own private duty care above and beyond what we would provide. And it's really what's going to make them most comfortable.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to say was, again, I always remind people that you don't want to wait too long, because as I said, most people who move into Susan Bailis don't see a nursing home. I mean, again, everybody's different, and
Right.
the medical status and history of people are different. But yeah,
Sure.
we have a person, I think our longest person, or our person who's been with us the longest, I think has been with us for now 12 years. We opened
Wow.
in 2003. And getting back to Susan Bailis, she unfortunately didn't see the opening of our community. She passed away at the age, I think, of 60. But she did know it was being developed, and she worked very hard with the advocacy of the city and everybody that she knew to make sure that there was a community like that in Boston.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So if somebody wanted to get in touch with you or to get a tour, how would they do that? Do you want to
Okay.
give out their phone number?
Sure. I could give out the phone number. I can give out the website.
Sure.
So our phone number is 617-247-1010. My name is Doug Warren, Warren. My extension 203, if that's any significance. But there's always somebody there if I'm not available to talk to about setting up a tour and coming in and really taking a look at the place. And you'd be amazed. The website.
Yeah, in case somebody wants to take a look on the computer.
So it's Susan Bailis, and it's Bailis. Susan Bailis AL for assisted living. So it's SusanBailisAL.com.
Okay. We'll flash that on the screen
okay,
too.
great.
But
Yeah, so we'll check out our website. There's a lot of information on there. I can always mail out information to people. A lot of times I just invite them in to sit down and talk with them like you and I are talking, and learn more about their loved one and what's important to your loved one. I always ask that. What is their typical day like? Because we want to keep the routine, and we want to keep what their typical day is like as much as we can.
Living
by
their
them
best life.
Living with us, exactly.
that's great.
So yeah, that's how you would get a hold of us. I think you'd be surprised that when people walk into Susan Bailis, or really any place that they're looking, their eyes and ears are very observant, and so I think we have a great, strong team that's been with us for a long time, right down to the certified nursing assistants, our resident care assistants, who directly assist our residents. Right up to our executive director, who's been there for, I think, 8 years. Wow. And our resident care director, who's a registered nurse, has been there for, I believe, 10 years.
That's great.
Our concierge, our lead concierge, has been there for 9.5 years. So
That's great.
it really runs the
You have
gamut
the
of the different
continuity
staff.
care
Exactly, exactly.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming
You're
on the
very
show
welcome.
today and telling everybody about assisted living. And we'll get your information out there. If anybody would like to know more about Susan Bailis, we'll be flashing that on the screen. And also, if you would like to come and take a tour of our beautiful North End rehab, I would love to give you a tour. And my number is 339-987-0716. And you can also check out our website for Marquis Health Services. So thank you for joining us today, and we will see you next time. Have a great day. Bye-bye.